Hello everyone and welcome back to the Red YouTube channel and to a returning episode of the Solitary Series with me, Jonathan Petts. And for those of you who are brand new to the Solitary Series, this was a series of sessions we started up during the midst of lockdown to still be able to interact with you, the Red customers, and those people who are interested in learning more about the Red ecosystem. We dove deep into some of the key core concepts that make working with Red so amazing. Now we took a little bit of a hiatus. I think that may be obvious as to why now with the release of the Red Komodo 6K yesterday. So myself and James, who I run these sessions with, have been working very, very hard to put together a lot of really exciting sessions to dive in deep. And for those new guys to Red, who it's their first camera, give you everything you need to know over the coming weeks and months. And for those of you who already own Red systems, a little bit of a hot take on some of the new things that differ from DSMC2 and Ranger. Now, these sessions are designed to be interactive, so I can see the chat going off there. We've got our Solitary Series team there in the chat as well, helping you in answering hopefully all of your questions, but then we can try and answer as many as we can here on the stream. So what have we got coming up? So in this stream, we're going to be doing initial setup, so everything we need to do to fire off our first few frames of 6K raw goodness. Tomorrow, James Lucarelli is coming up with a connecting to your Komodo. Komodo has a series of amazing wireless capabilities, and he's going to dive into those. We're then going to follow up with a bit of a deeper dive on the app, and going forward, we're going to look at accessories, underwater housings, gimbals, drones, and everything going beyond that. If there's something that you want to see us really dive into, drop us an email at solitaryseries@red.com, and we'll hopefully try and get that into a session for you. So I reckon we go ahead and get started. So in this session, getting started, what have we got to do to get the Komodo up and running? First thing is always power. How are we powering the Komodo? What options do I have? What batteries do I need? We're then going to look at lens adapters. I want to get cinema glass on there. I want EF. I want M mount. What kind of adapters and solutions are there to getting that glass on the camera? Media. What kind of solutions are there? Which media should I be looking at? And if this is your first Red camera, what to expect when you download a card for the very first time? And then finally, we'll end up going through the menus and touching on a few key areas to help you out to get the camera set up to record that record button, to press that record button and fire off those frames. So let's head over to the camera and we'll start having a little look at some of these cool concepts. So here we are with the Red Komodo 6K. Now I have one of the Beta ST units, obviously being an employee, very, very lucky to get my hands on this, but everything we talk about today will be the exact same for the black production units. It's just a cosmetic color. So whenever we get a brand new camera, we're thinking about power. How can I power it on and get going? So on the back of the Komodo, we have dual Canon BP900 series battery slots, which take 7.4 volts. This camera absolutely sips on power. It's amazing how long this thing can run on a couple of small batteries that I'll show you in a moment. Now, you don't have to have two batteries applied at the same time. They are hot swappable, and you only need to have one in at a time, which is super cool for running for really long durations. And I'll actually just bring in some of those batteries now. So currently, we are recommending the use of the genuine Canon batteries because they have a series of chips inside them that communicate with the camera, the voltage, the runtime, those kind of things. But if you go over onto red.com, and go onto our, my overlay, one moment. But if you go over onto red.com, there is a series of third-party accessories that are approved, and then there are ones that are compatible. So I'll drop that link and I'll show you that on the desktop in a moment. But for the moment, we're looking at these batteries, and I'll just get up a little overlay there to show you which ones we're talking about. We're looking at the BP955 and the BP975. Now, in terms of runtime, we are expecting roughly around 3 hours on 2 of the 955s and somewhere in the region of 5 hours for the 975s. So let's go ahead and plop on some of these 955s. So one thing that I have seen some people doing already is, unlike a V-Lock, you do not need to start from the very top of the camera to get the battery on. You can see that there are some little slots here, and they are then the invert of what's on the camera. So you've basically got to go about 95% of the way down, as you can see there, push in on the little compression spring there, and the battery is now mounted. And you can have two of the different batteries on there as well. You don't have to have two of the same one. So same thing again, around 95% of the way down, push in, and that is now connected to the camera. Now, this is not the only way. I hear some of you saying, what about my VLOX? What if I want to have gold mount on there? And there are a series of red-approved solutions as well. So Core SWX have a really great solution that interfaces directly with the dual Canon BP900 series slots and converts out to a V-Lock, which is super cool. Now, what if you don't want to have that on the back of the camera? What if you want to have the camera really right up against something and you want to have a power connection utilizing the DC input? Well, Wooden Camera also have a solution for you there as well, and that is all available on red.com. You can go check out the third-party approved accessory lists and go and see what is compatible with this system. Speaking of the DC input, this has a really wide input range. So the batteries on here will only accept 7.4 volts, but the DC input will take anything from 7.4 to 17 volts, which means our VLOX, our gold mounts, some of our floor batteries can interface through this. Now, one thing you will spot for those astute of you familiar with DSM-C2 and Ranger will notice that there is a 2-pin connection, but it is a male connection. So on DSM-C2 and Ranger, it's actually a female connection. So if I get the opposing side here of the DC cable, you can see that this is then a female connector. So your Teradek cables, those kind of things, won't be able to be used here. Now, in terms of the polarity as well, those of you who like to make your own cables, there is a wiring diagram in the operations guide you can go look at if you fancy making your own cables. It is wired for the US polarity instead of the European polarity. Now, again, mounting the cable in, we can see that there is a little red dot. If I focus there, see there's a little red alignment dot. It's a little push-pull connector, which will release it when you want to pull it out. And then that corresponds to, on the camera, hopefully you can see there's a little red dot. Line those two up. And it's plugged in, a little green light on to confirm the body has power. Now, something that's really, really cool is the camera can act as a charger when turned off for your batteries. So I think one of these will be a little bit low. So hopefully I can plug this in. That one's fully charged. Hopefully this one is not as charged. Ah, they're all fully charged. Oh, there we go. That's now gone orange. So you can now see when that's gone orange and when the camera is turned off, you can charge your batteries. So this is amazing in the capacity of if you're traveling super light, because these batteries are absolutely tiny. You know, traveling with a load of these in a backpack, potentially flying, obviously dependent on your travel carrier, it's much easier. And if you've only got one charger and you've got a Komodo, you've now got two chargers. You haven't got to wake up at 1 a.m. to then swap over your batteries. So that's really, really neat, but the camera has got to be off. Next, in terms of power, we have the on-off switch. Now, this is not a hardware cutoff. So by going into the off position, you don't cut power to the camera. It will go through a turn-off procedure. And likewise, if you have it in the on position with no power, as soon as the camera gets power, it will turn on. So you've basically got auto boot. So it's on a crane or a gimbal or in a hard to reach place, you can basically have the camera turning on and off as and when you need it through power. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to plug on both of the BP955s because I want to keep the camera super small. And it's actually auto booting for me, so I left that in the on switch. And now let's think about the lens mounts. So let's spin around while the camera is turning on and we'll look here. So the camera comes equipped with an EOS RF mount, which is fantastic because it has a really shallow flange depth. And we can see that here. So this is the witness mark, and this shows us where the sensor position is in the body. So your AC, if he wants to run a bit of tape out to measure and get his focus marks, he can do that as well. But this just really illustrates how shallow that flange depth is. And what this gives us the ability to do is to convert into almost anything else we want. Now, on red.com, again as well, there is a whole list of every mount you can convert to and ones that are also incompatible. When we move over to the desktop portion of this, I'll run you through that and just show you that as well. When we come round, we can see the mount here. We have a load of pins on the bottom. Currently, there is no RF electronic support. We've been working very hard to support as many EF lenses as we can with the phase detect autofocus that's built into the sensor. And it's absolutely amazing. The first time on a Red camera I've been using it, it's blown my mind. So every camera black unit comes with the EOS RF to EF adapter in the box. So this comes with it. So as soon as you get the camera out of the box, you haven't got to buy anything else. You can get your lenses straight on there. So let's get that mounted on. Twist and click. We've lined the 2 red dots up, and we are now with a mount. Just going to power the body off quickly. Same goes for mounting an EF lens. So my personal favorite lens at the moment, the GDU 24mm. I've been using this to put the camera in crazy places, mounted to bikes, all these kind of things, mounted on movies, on people riding mountain bikes. Really, really cool stuff. It's just super lightweight. And you can see now just how small this body is, with 2 batteries, a lens that can use the phase detect autofocus through the electronic communication with the EF adapter. And that's really what this mount is all about, adapting you to use basically anything that you want with the camera. But I hear you saying, what about my cine lenses? What options have I got? Well, you'll notice that we have a beautiful Supreme Prime over there, and I'm going to show you the mounting procedure for that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off, and we'll put on some of our options here. So what we have here are 2 of the options, but there are multiple ones available on red.com to see what's compatible. Just move that over there. There we go. And here are 2 of the current ones. So we have the Kipatai Revolver RF to PL, and we have the Vocaz RF to PL as well. And you'll notice there's a few key different design choices with both of them. The Vocaz has 4 mounting points that go onto a cage, which I'll just bring in now. Which way around is it? There we go. 4 mounting points. And you will notice that on the Kipatai, we have a rear mounting solution with their chin strap. Now, the reason why we have these accessories is that as we start to get heavier and heavier glass, moving away from a small GDU 24mm, we obviously increase in weight. And when we start looking at big zooms and Cooke S7Is and these kind of things, we start to move that weight away from the mount. And when we start using Prestons, Teradeks, C-motions, the torque in those gears could have a little bit of rotational play in the body. So these solutions basically make sure there's no rotational play in that adapter on the lens at all. And you also get the benefit of you get loads of additional mounting hardware, especially on something like the Vocaz one here, loads of options for getting on all your extra accessories. So just giving you that bit of extra support. Now, one fantastic thing here as well, thanks to that RF mount and the short flange depth, is NDs. This is something that I have been asked to death about, having NDs in there, and with the Revolver, we have NDs built into the mount. Now, this is fantastic because it allows you as the customer to choose the quality of the ND that you want in your body. And it also means in terms of if you're in the middle of the desert or going on a long trek, and if it was built into the body and something damages that mechanism, your body's gone down. But if it's built into the adapter, something cracks here, I can take it out, I can put a new one in. Same goes for the, where's my Canon one? Same goes for the Canon one here. This is a relatively affordable option. Something happens there, it gets scratched, it gets damaged, take it out, let's put a brand new one in, and our camera has not gone down. As well as choosing the quality, affordable, and then super high quality Nissi filters in here. So let's go ahead and get the Revolver mounted to the camera, and I'll show you the correct procedure for mounting this onto the body. So what John has told me is it is important to do this in these correct steps to ensure your back focus is accurate. So what we're going to do is take it off, and we can see that there is, where's the little orange dot? There we go, little orange dot just there. That's going to correspond to the red dot. Line that up. And the reason why we're doing it in these steps is that if we had the chin strap mounted first, and then we attached the adapter to this, we run the risk of moving the adapter away from the body, and then our back focus would be off. Doing it this way ensures your back focus is completely accurate. So put the adapter on. Now turn the body over. Extend those screws. There we go. And at this stage, don't screw it into the body yet. We're screwing the adapter into the chin strap. So let's go ahead and screw that in now. And don't over tighten it either. There's probably a few AECs gawking at me for not doing it 10 times tighter than I should, but just go finger tight. You don't want to risk over tightening anything and it moving it away from the mount. So now that's been screwed in, let's move over to the chin strap and we'll go through opposites to evenly distribute the pressure over the body. So I'll go for that top corner, and I'll go for this bottom corner over here, and then we're ready to get our lens on. Screw that in there. Finger tight, 2 more to go. We can now go for any orientation we want. There we go, and then onto the final one, and I'll show you how solid this mount actually is. Again, there are other options. We've got Wooden Camera doing different ones, Vocaz doing different ones. Definitely go check out the third-party approved accessories page to have a little look there. And now, let's get a lens mounted on. So PL, for those of you not familiar, positive lock. It's a bit different to the RF and the EF mount in where the lens locks into it. You actually lock the mount around the lens here. You can see there's a little alignment pin, and if we bring a lens in, this gorgeous Supreme Prime, you'll see on the lens there is then the corresponding gap. So obviously make sure the lens is around the right way. Let's go get this mounted up. Aligned, lock that down, and if I get my focus back again, I can now hold this from the lens, and that is absolutely rock tight. There is no movement in that whatsoever. That's supporting it to the body, to the mount. We can now have a Preston going at full speed on here, and we've got no concerns about any movement on there. Because basically my personal rule of thumb has been, if I'm holding the camera one-handed with the lens and it starts to feel a little bit on my wrist, what is that adapter going through? Let's get some support on there, especially if the lens has an adapter on it. That's kind of a bit of a hint of, hey, this lens is a bit heavy. Let's think about some support. So we've got our lens on. What is next? So the next bit is media. So we've got power, we've got a lens, what are we recording to? So let's go over to the side of the body. We have an integrated CFast 2.0 slot. This little door does not need to be closed to record. You can take it off if you wish for cooling, or maybe it's getting in the way or something like that. Little pin to here to remove the CFast card. You can remove this. And CFast is fantastic because it's affordable and really, really readily available. I've been in situations where I've been shooting maybe in the Swiss Alps, or I need a CFast card. I can just pop to a local photography shop, and chances are they'll have these. So wherever you are, these should be really, really easy to come pick up. And very, very fast. You can see 560 megasecond. But what cards are approved? So let's get up my second little overlay here. We have a series of approved cards because not every card is built the same way. Some cards say they have a read and write speed, but in reality, they can't sustain that over long periods of time. If you're recording 6K RAW for 40-minute takes, maybe potentially, that card has to be able to handle that speed and temperature over long durations. So the cards on the screen are the current approved ones, and again, they're available to see on the third-party approved page. Now, mounting it into the body, let's just get rid of that overlay. Mounting it into the body, branding on the front, there's a small little lip on the actual card itself. Line it up, push in without any resistance. This little ejector pin comes out. Make sure that if the camera is powered on, I'll show you this in the menus, that you eject the card, but if the camera is powered off, you can come in and eject the card just fine. So we now have a card mounted to the camera. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move over to my desktop, and we'll look at what happens when we want to download a card for the very first time, because a lot of you, I'm sure, are brand new to Red and maybe haven't done this before. So let me just get my mouse booted up over here, and we will move over to the desktop. Desktop view. Oh, wrong one. There we go. So here we are on the desktop. So I've got a card already mounted to my machine here, A008, when I've mounted it up. Now, when you look inside it, this is the folder you need, A008. The digital magazine bin, you don't need to copy this over. So if you need to send someone or download this onto an SSD, just copy off this folder. Now, when we go into it, you will see we have a list of folders. C001 all the way down to 6. And this is our clips we've obviously turned over 6 times on whatever we're recording. You can see. Now, if you want to send someone just one clip or two clips, come in and just copy these folders over. RDC, Red Digital Clip. And what happens when you look into it, you will see a series of files. So the camera actually breaks up the R3D into 2.1 gigabyte chunks. Now, don't worry, you haven't got to come in and span these together yourself. Every major editing platform will put this together for you. So Resolve, Final Cut, Premiere Pro, Scratch, Avid, all span these together, and I'll show you that now in practice. So don't come in and copy half of them and kind of send it out. Make sure you copy this entire folder. So let's come into DaVinci Resolve here. We'll come up to the media pane, and we can see we've got our card here, A008. When we then come into that, you'll see already Resolve has read the R3D SDK, and all of our clips have come in. There's no folders. They've all spanned it together immediately for us. Let's have a little look at one of these clips, and I'll kind of span through it. This is here at our Red London offices. Just giving you a little sneaky tour around here. You can see that's all come in seamlessly. A few other clips here as well. This is in our little workflow area, looking at some content I shot. So super, super easy. Everything is handled for you. Just wanted to make that clear for you guys who are brand new to Red. So let's head back over to our Komodo view. And we're now ready to power the camera on. So let me just get my other view back up. Here we are. So what I'm going to do is, just for the ease of having the whole camera in the frame, I'm just going to take the batteries off and plug in the DC power, and we're now going to be booting up the camera. Going to plug in the DC, lining up the red dot to the red dot, and on. Camera boot time is around 20 seconds, somewhere in that region. You'll see the beta logo come up. I'm still running beta firmware here, but when you get this, it'll be slightly different. So give this some time. I'll just look over to my Solitary Series team to make sure they're keeping all you guys in order. There we go. Make sure that's focused up. There we go. And what we're going to do here is basically go through the key settings that we need to look at to firstly understand how to work with the camera and to get our project settings ready so we can come in and press record for the first time. So here we are with the main Komodo UI. You can interface with it in a couple of ways. We have a physical touch screen where we can touch, scroll around, move throughout the body. We can also come in, as you saw there, and come through physical keys on the actual body itself. So if you're a bit haphazard like me, or you're wearing gloves and it's starting to get quite chilly here in the UK, I can still fully interact with the camera. So we want to set up our project. So let's come in and go through into project settings first. So this is where we can set our shooting format. This is our resolution. So you can come in, we can shoot 6K 17:9, which is the full sensor. We can then come down, we've got various flavors of 6K, 5K, 4K, 2K. So I'll come in and I'll just click on 6K 17:9, the full sensor. I think I might just stop down there a little bit just so you guys can see the screen a bit better. There we go, sorry about that. So as we come down now, we see recording frame rate and project time base. So recording frame rate is physically how many frames are actually being recorded onto the card. Project time base is then what those frames are being played back at. So we're recording 24 frames a second, that's being played back at 24 frames a second, so that's real time. Now, if we come back up and let's say, hey, let's shoot a little bit of slow motion, I'm going to come in and let's go to 5K. We can change our recording frame rate to 48 frames a second. Goes yellow to warn us that we are off from our project time base. And at this point, we are now getting 2 times slow-mo because it's being played back at 24. Now, if we came back and we wanted to do a little bit of a Hobbit and we wanted to record at 48 as well, we can come in here and play that back at 48 or 60 or any of those variants there. I'm going to come back and just go to 6K because I want to use that entire global shutter 6K sensor and just go back to 24. Now, obviously, if you're in the EU like me, you can do 25 FPS, 29, 30, 50, 60 as your playback rate in camera. Next, we're coming down to file format. We have 2 options here. We have the RAW, R3D, and ProRes. You do need to reboot to get into ProRes, but we've got a Red camera. We want to use that full RAW container. We now have R3D quality. So this is, again, one of the huge benefits of shooting Red Code RAW is the ability to dial in your compression while still retaining the raw imagery, that 16-bit imagery. So HQ is where we're seeing people who want image quality at the maximum. Data storage is not a concern for them. Studios, visual effects work, that kind of thing, where money for storage is really no object. MQ is where we're seeing most of you guys sitting potentially. Great for streaming platforms, online content, corporate work, basically the best blend of image quality and kind of data saving kind of storage capabilities. LQ is then when you need those long takes. You've got a long formal interview, maybe a concert, a socially distanced concert of that. This is where you can kind of sit. But what kind of record times am I going to be getting? HQ on a 512 gig card, you're looking somewhere in the region of 30 to 33 minutes. MQ looking somewhere 45 to 48 minutes. And then LQ around an hour and 10, hour and 13 minutes. So you've got a really good spread there of flexibility for the storage amount that you kind of want for the image quality that you want. But it's always important to do your own testing to find out the image quality that suits your needs for the production and also the deliverable as well. But I'm going to go MQ, that's what I've been shooting all of my stuff on. Coming down, we can then set the ProRes codec resolutions. You can do 4K or 2K in 422 HQ or 422, and then you can either choose to bake in the LUT or just have it record in log. We then have our pre-record settings and our slate settings, but we're not worrying about those for the moment. So set up our project settings. We're now going to go into the image and LUT settings. So coming in here, we have another way to adjust our ISO, shutter and white balance, which can also be done from the home screen here. You can tap through and make changes. If you had an EF lens attached, you could then make changes through that here as well. But let's go back into the menu and come down. We have our output color space. So our output color space is it's a metadata flag. It's not being burnt into the image, but this is basically what's being output through that SDI or onto the monitor. So if you've got a lookup table that has its own Rec 709 conversion or Rec 2020 conversion, if you apply the LUT now, you'll basically get a double LUT because the camera is handling the output. But we can turn that off and just go to red, white, gamma, RGB. You'll then see that all the other controls get turned off because your lookup table is going to be controlling all of those outputs. But the LUTs I have in the camera don't have the 709, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to apply Rec 709 back to my image. Coming down, we then have control over our output tone map and highlight roll-off. Now this is really, really cool thanks to the power of the RAW codec in the camera. And if you go back to Solitary Series Episode 1, I actually show you what this means in post-production. It basically helps you really hone in that look. So you can have an output tone map with a really high contrast feel to it. Maybe you're shooting a noir-esque piece, but then maybe your next job, you're doing a beauty commercial and you want really soft organic roll-offs. You can come in, have a really soft, low contrast image with a beautiful highlight roll-off. And again, this is all metadata, so it's not being burnt into the image. It's just a flag that will help you visualize the image, and it may impact how you expose the image. So the standard is soft highlight roll-off and medium contrast output tone map. If you ever changed it around and you just want the standard, this is what we're saying is the standard. We've then got our display preset, so SDR, HDR, HLG, depending on what you're monitoring on set. And we then come to 3D LUT and CDL. The CDL is super cool. If you've got a very specific DIT, you can come in, you can load CDLs, or they can put their individual numbers in for the power, slope, and offset, which is really, really neat. But what I want to show you here is the 3D LUT. So for the first time, we've got a series of inbuilt LUTs that come standard on the camera. Now, Dan Duran, our workflow wizard and genius, has been working very, very hard to make a series of LUTs that look absolutely stunning. We have these built into the camera, and if you go to our download section on red.com, you'll see that there is a series of creative LUTs as well. The ones we've got in the Komodo are a black and white LUT. We've then got a film bias LUT, a film bias bleach bypass, and a film bias offset. My personal favorite is the film bias. It has a really nice look to it. It really does feel like a film stock when you're shooting with the Komodo. Just for those guys that want that look on set. Obviously, you can still load your own LUTs into there. So to do that, on your CFast card, you make a folder in lowercase LUTS, the word LUTs. You put your cube files in there, and when you come in here, you can then import all of those right into the camera. So lots of flexibility there, and you can see I've got the film bias LUT enabled because that's my personal favorite. So we're starting to get pretty close to start shooting. Now, the next thing I want to draw your attention to is calibration or black shading the sensor. One other quick note here, we've got multiple languages: English, simplified Chinese, French, German, Japanese, Spanish. So coming on to maintenance, we'll see we have a calibrate. Now what this is black shading the sensor. And what this does is it ensures clean and consistent pixel sensitivity across the entire image. Now we have a fantastic red tech video on this and an article that's down in the description below. So after this session, if you want to go learn about that, it's a really fantastic in-depth section. But to summarize it very, very quickly, things like temperature change can impact noise, such as fixed pattern noise. And by calibrating the sensor, we can map out that fixed pattern noise, lit pixels, those kind of things on the body itself. You haven't got to come and do that in post-production through noise reduction, or a VFX artist having to come in and paint out the occasional lit pixel or something. So it takes around a minute, so it's very, very fast. And all you do is you put the port cap on the body, don't have the lens on because you might have some light leak kind of coming in there. You start the calibration, 1 minute, you're now ready to go. Now in the video, it will talk about the situations of when you should consider doing it. So basically, at the start of the day when the camera's turning on, depending on the ambient temperature, get that calibration going. And maybe you're starting the day in a very cool set, it's nice and air conditioned, and you move outside and there's maybe a 10 to 15 degree difference. I would then consider doing one, but the camera will warn you when it thinks you should do one, and I'll show you that now. So let's head back to the camera. So back on the camera, we can see at the very top here, there is a little T and E. As long as those are green, the camera is happy and we are good to go. It is happy that the temperature matches the calibration map for the temperature that you set it at. Now when you turn the camera on, it will start red because obviously the camera is going to be cold, and it will go to yellow when it's warming up and then green when it's happy. If at any point it goes yellow, it's kind of saying, hey, please consider maybe doing one if you've got time. If it goes red, it's highly suggested that you do a calibration for the sensor to ensure that the blacks and the noise levels and that fixed pattern noise is as good as possible. So once we've done that, we're now starting to get very, very close to being ready to shoot. But let's look at exposing the image. So in Menu Tactics Part 1, we do discuss exposure a little bit more in depth, but I'm just going to summarize it very nicely for you here. So firstly, we have the ability to view a histogram on the camera. So we can tap here and go between our kind of status and information or a histogram. And over here, we have our traffic lights and goalpost system. And this is a really great way of ensuring your digital negative, your raw file, has as much latitude and information in there as possible for what you want. So at the top, we have a series of RGB indicators, and at the bottom we do as well. And when the ones on the top are lit, that's basically giving us a warning of, hey, oh, I've got too much dynamic range, hold on. Let me get a light. It's saying, hey, somewhere in the image, there is some overexposure. So if I bring a light in now, you'll see that they are now illuminating, and these goalposts are telling us by how much. So at this point in time, it's saying, hey, most of the image is kind of being underexposed at the moment. As I take it away, it's saying, not much of the image is overexposed, but somewhere in the image, you're getting some overexposure. So if I now take this out, and I do it the other way, if I now stop down, you'll see that these are now coming on, and by showing us how much the image is under. This is very helpful in kind of helping you understand what's going on in your image. Am I going to be getting noise? Am I going to be getting detail in the shadows? But your next question might be, yeah, but where in the image is that happening? And we can visualize that as well. So if you actually tap on the goalposts themselves, you tap on those, haphazard there, and you can see we have a load of extra things we can now apply. So the first one we're going to look at is the exposure guide. Now this is looking at the log image. So changing things like ISO will impact this, but it's looking at the log image. Now what we're seeing here is we're seeing some green and red overlays. So green is your middle grey. So if you're exposing for skin tones, you then may go a stop above that. Now if we then open up a bit more and I bring my light source back in, we will see that red is now visualizing, hey, this is the area where that overexposure we think is happening. Now in this situation, it's an LED bulb, so there's no point me stopping down because we're not going to see any detail in there. But if I take this out and we now stop the lens down completely, we'll see some purple be introduced into the image. So if I come down, we will now see a bit of purple being introduced saying, hey, there may be a little bit of detail loss there in the shadows, potentially a bit of noise. As we stop down more and more, we'll see that will fill more and more of the image. So we can basically open up until we get rid of all of that. And we can now go, that's kind of where I want my exposure, or maybe I'm going to open up a bit more just to make sure that I'm getting as much detail in the shadows as possible. We do also have a video mode. This is based, I turned the zebras on there. We've got a video mode, which is basing that off the output image, so the Rec 709, not the log. We also have assists for edge focus, so you can come in, really nail your focus very, very quickly, focus, and we also have peaking, which you can then change the settings for all of these in the camera menus. One other thing that's super helpful here is we have magnify, and for you red users, we can now move the magnify box around completely freely, which is super cool. So we've learned how to understand the exposure assists in the camera. We're now getting very, very close. What about getting a feed out of the camera? So on the Komodo, we have a 4K 12G SDI port, which can output to anything from HD up to 4K. So let's get this plugged in now. And if I enable my overview here, we can now see the image output coming from the Komodo. And there's a couple of different things that are helpful here. So the first one is, what if I want to go off to an external recorder, like a Shinobi or something like that, and I want a clean feed? So we're going to come into the menus, we're going to come up to monitoring, we can then come into SDI, we can come down, so we're seeing our resolutions in here, anything up to 4K DCI. The output feed is 422, just so you guys are aware. We can change the frequency, so if we're shooting 30 FPS or anything like that, up to 60, we can get that frequency coming out of the SDI. We can then have the image look, so if we want to record externally to a recorder and have a log feed, you can now see we're getting a log image coming out. We could turn off the guides, the tools, and we can then turn off the overlay. My recorder's going to blimp back in there in a second. There we go. We're now having a completely clean output. But what if you want to have an output you're using as a second AC, as a DP, and you want that key information? So let's turn this back on. We will now see when I rejig this, we now have overlay options. So we have an advanced overlay and also a simple overlay, which then trims that down to make it unobtrusive so nothing's getting in your way. We can then come back on, go into advanced mode. Let's get our guides on there. We want to have the look coming out because we want the camera to control the LUT. And now we're starting to look pretty good. The final thing I want to touch on is those guides. So you can select the guides and the frame guides to help you frame the image that you want. So the sensor is 17:9, but obviously if you're delivering for TV, that kind of thing, you may want to use 16:9 frame guides, or maybe even cinema widescreen 2.4:1. You can change the scaling, the offset, the line style if you want solid, or maybe a different color. Let's go for a magenta. Let's get that dialed in. You can see that change on the image output there. And if you want to, you can even set your own one. So if you want to do Instagram frame lines or TikTok, because these kind of things are getting very, very popular now, having to shoot kind of 2 jobs at the same time, we can do that as well. We come into here, you can do user or absolute, and you can type in the exact dimensions that you want for that frame guide. But I'm going to go 16:9 because I'm delivering for some online content. You can add multiple ones as well if you want to have them stacked and those kind of things over the image. And essentially, at this point, we've got to do is format the card. So you can come in, secure format. I'll get rid of my overlay here as well. Now, a secure format will zero out the card. This is great for data integrity in terms of the longevity of your card. So it will take a bit of time. Those of you familiar with DSMC2 will be familiar with the quick format, which doesn't really delete anything on the card. It basically says, hey, camera, you can write over the data that's on there. So we can come in, and if we do a secure format, it will take a moment because it's actually removing that data and zeroing it out. And you'll just get a bit of an idea here. The larger the cards you have, the longer it will take. Obviously, it's got to write more zeros. So we'll just see that here. Give that a moment there. You can see that the CFast over there is not illuminated because we're formatting. You can see the battery indicators we have over there to say that we're plugged in through DC. If you plugged in a BP955, we would see that turn on and we'd see the information coming in. You can see that the battery is now plugged in and our media has successfully formatted. And at this point, if we frame up, let's find an interesting frame to get my computer screen there. Let's focus up. So I want to come in. I'm going to tap on here. I'm going to do my edge focus. Maybe I want to check my output on my screen here. And I want to have the SDI tools coming through there. Let's focus up there. Let's check our exposure as well. Give that a little check. Are we happy with the exposure? Yep, I'm happy with that. Turn that off. Go back to the home screen and press record. So we have now done everything we need to get the camera up and ready to record some amazing 6K imagery. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back to my main view and see if there's any questions. Hopefully this was helpful for you first-time Red users. Just get some of the nitty-gritty stuff out the way. I can see one from James here. Can you show how to record 6K in camera with 4K ProRes? Yep. Let's go back in and do the reboot on the ProRes. So let's come back to it here. So what we'll do is we'll come back into the menus. We'll go up to our project settings. We'll then come to file format. Let me just focus up there again a bit. Select R3D, go into ProRes, press OK. You will get a warning. Don't worry, it won't just take you out of it by accident. If some AC comes in and is playing out with the menus, you can still do that. Press yes. The camera will shut down and then reboot back into that ProRes mode. So we'll just let that do that now. Give that a few moments. Just looking over at the chat there as well, I can see lots of questions being answered, lots of you guys in there as well. Hopefully they're keeping you in check. There you go, again, around 20 seconds to boot up. Sound off anyone in the chat if you managed to order a Komodo yesterday. It'd be interesting to see how many of you guys in the chat put an order in yesterday. Initializing, there we go. And then as soon as we come back in, we'll be able to come in and dial in those ProRes settings. Now the ProRes will sample the entire sensor. In RAW, when you go down in resolutions, it will window on the sensor, but in ProRes, it will use the entire 6K sensor. So we're in here, we go to menu, project settings, and you'll see that now R3D quality is grayed out, and we've now got all these ProRes options. So you can shoot in 2K, HD, UHD, or 4K. Let's go 4K. We can then come down and choose the codec. We've got two options. We've got ProRes 422 or ProRes 422 HQ. And you can really see the change there in the runtime. We get about an hour, you know, ProRes 422, an hour at 4K, or we can do RAW 6K at LQ and get an hour and 13. Or if we come into 422 HQ, 42 minutes. That's the same as shooting 6K MQ, 16-bit imagery, all that kind of stuff. Super nice. We can then come in and we can choose the ProRes baked-in settings. We can burn our LUT in if we want a really quick turnaround, or we can have the log to give us a little bit of flexibility in post. So let's go with the log because we want that flexibility in post, and then that's how you set up the ProRes recording, and you can come in and press record just like you would in RAW. So I'm going to come back to my camera view here, and I'm just going to spend a moment just looking through the chat to see if there's any other questions before we end out here. And don't forget, tomorrow, James Lucarelli's got a really exciting stream where he's going through connecting to the Komodo. in wireless mode. So we've got ad hoc and infrastructure, tons of cool stuff there with what the Komodo can do, and some cool little nuggets of info in there for you as well. It looks like James and the gang have been filtering through a lot of your questions very well. So I'll just give a moment for the chat to catch up, because I know there's a little bit of a delay here, so I'll give it a moment more. And I think we will end the session here. I'm just seeing James typing. I'll make sure that I've answered all the questions. Don't want to leave anyone out. Lots of people buying the camera there. That's awesome. 2 ordered. Matthew, you madman. Brett with an order there as well. Paul with an order as well. But yeah, I think we will wrap this up here. I really want to thank everyone who tuned in. Don't forget to subscribe to the Red YouTube channel to be alerted as soon as we have more sessions going live. Check out red.com for a series of other really exciting articles and videos on the YouTube channel as well. But I wish you all the best going forward. See you soon in the next series, and stay safe and go shoot something.
There's one thing I love as much as shooting movies, and that's riding Harley-Davidsons. So when Red approached me to test their new camera, the Komodo, in extreme conditions, I said, hell yeah. There is a gathering of hardened riders who come from all over the world, beasts of the cold who wait all year for the snow and ice. Vintage as the bikes they ride, they're known as the frozen few. I took my team on the roam to observe these men who honor long traditions of Harley-Davidson. Riders who challenge the boundaries of mortal blood and metal bikes. This is the smallest cinema camera I have ever used. 6K. And combined with the Lightsino lenses, we pushed it to the limit. We strapped them down, smothered them in sleet, forcing them to withstand the harshest conditions. Tight spaces, speeding cars on bikes. It is straight up the most versatile camera that I have ever used. It's like cinema in the palm of your hands. I hunted down the frozen few to test Red's newest digital camera. But instead, this tribe of Harley men took me in as a brother and gave me something I'll never forget. I was honored to be a part of this and shared the story of these men, and I am extremely honored to be a part of the Red family. Thank you for the opportunity. Aloha.